record this. All right, so welcome everybody to our kind of relaunched kind of leaders kind of meeting, and I think most of you guys kind of have received some form of communication kind of from us, kind of describing kind of what we are trying to do, or what we did, and what we're trying to do now. So just to maybe kind of refresh some kind of a memory, and also for those who are here for the first time, we've been actually doing these doing a series of kind of leaders meeting for a couple weeks now, and the original intent was to kind of create a space for leaders and all kind of leaders of all stripes, of different levels, to really kind of just have a discussion around, holy crap, what do we do now? Let's sort of commiserate a little bit, but also like let's share some best practices. Kind of what are we doing during this pandemic? So that was we started that maybe 2.5 months ago, and the dust has definitely settled. Kind of the last couple of months, things are starting to reopen. I think we're now kind of like settled into the work from home, being a little bit more remote, having a little bit more flexibility, and kind of some of our kind of attendees and kind of are getting comfortable. We want to work from home now. We hear from other people, kind of we're not there in our own company or around us. It's trying to figure out kind of well, what's next. So we intentionally kind of took a break for a couple of weeks as we sort of kind of served our original purpose of creating a space for conversation. And now, as we are seeking clarity, we are changing our format a little bit. So before I hand it off to kind of John to kind of introduce our introduce kind of what we're doing, the panel, and our kind of interviewer, for the next for the next 3 months, what we have decided to do is to kind of have a meeting kind of every other week, and they're all very topic driven. So every month we're tackling a new topic. So this month it's all about work, and really kind of getting back to work. So kind of this meeting is really kind of all about kind of just perhaps kind of small businesses that are kind of more what we call kind of like Main Street businesses. How do we kind of get back to work, and how does that look like? How do we serve people? And in 2 weeks, we have a sort of a continuation of the topic, but in a very different from a very different perspective, from more of the traditional kind of office worker kind of perspective. And we're going to look at that from different levels, from the corporate, get back into the office and work, to the, hey, we have some flexibility, let's let's try kind of working from home more. And also we know that there are a lot of kind of solo entrepreneurs as well, who do travel kind of for work to go meet with clients, which can we still do that? So we're going to kind of keep having these conversations, but they're going to be very topic driven, and we're going to bring in speakers kind of from now on. And also, just to kind of put one last thing out there, is that one of the things that have been kind of really different and great and fruitful about the meetings that we had before is these kind of smaller kind of breakout groups. And I know that this is not something for everyone, but that's one thing that we have done kind of in the first couple weeks, that we found a lot of kind of great kind of connections with people who are in the same boat, who are experiencing the same thing, being able to kind of ask questions, get to know one another, and network, given this time that we can't go outside. So we want to kind of keep that portion of it keep that portion alive. And so after our kind of panelists, our panel discussion, we are going to break up into kind of smaller groups. And once again, it is really kind of up to you, kind of how you want to engage, and if you want to engage. And we will definitely not be offended if it's like, if you are not ready, not prepared, and it's like, we'll do it next time, but not today. So just want to kind of put that out there, and come with, and one last thing before I pass off to John, and maybe I said one last thing already, so I apologize for that. So we have now a team of people who are kind of organizing this event. So I do want to kind of I just realized I can't just ask people to stand up because this is not real life. So, I'm just going to call up the names of people who are kind of like putting this event together. And we're always kind of looking for for people who are interested, who want to get involved, to help kind of craft and ask the questions. So we have Grant on our top left, if that's kind of the same position for everyone. With John Bates, we have Mike Valdez and Dana. So the five of us have been kind of working together to put these events together. And also, and yeah, I was going to say one last thing, but I think I can talk forever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it off to John to share a little bit of kind of just what he does and some of the leadership work that he is involved in, and introduce the panel.
Thanks, Tino. So I think back, it makes me think back to the first couple times that this group now kind of reimagined, but back then, the first couple times we met. And it's interesting because one of the things that was the subject back then was the PPP loans and the small business disaster loans. And I think that people were applying for those, people were trying to figure out what was going to happen. We didn't understand how COVID was transmitted. We didn't know. There's still a lot of unknowns around all this stuff, but there were even more unknowns. And the funny thing to me is that I kind of set my horizon at June. I was like, yeah, June, we'll make it till June. I don't know what I was thinking. June, like, we know a little bit more. Nothing significant has really changed. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have, all the answers yet. And so I think that it's great. I mean, to everybody that was there for those early ones, thank you. I think that hopefully for all of us, but for sure for me, those meant a lot in a time of just really great uncertainty. And I think that having reimagined this, we have taken a better horizon. Like the horizon's kind of whatever it is, we don't know. And to get together and ask these questions and create a safe space for us to have a conversation around what's going on, I think is just super exciting to me and hopefully really useful to all of us. So, one of the things that I will say is if it's easy for you to come on to video, it would mean a lot to those of us that are here with you. And as a leader, I would say, this isn't your meeting. You don't have to do anything here. You're just here for fun, and I get that. And thank you for your donation and contribution to the charity that we're supporting with this. However, when you're leading these things, or if you're a significant player in a meeting, never underestimate how much it means to other people to have you be there on video with them and to actually be able to see you, since we can't get together in person. And then one of the other things that I think would be a great thing to just say out loud at this meeting and for everything that we do here is something that is a big deal in the distributed world. It's also, I think, something that could really be a small but significant part of what's going on socially in America right now, which is API. And I don't mean the programming interface, I mean assume positive intent. I think everyone is here with the goal of forwarding our action. And so to have this be a safe space, to have this be a place where it can actually be a conversation and where we can listen for the best in each other is something that I would really like to create and request from everyone. And so now what I'll do is I'll give it over to Grant Graves, who's a good friend of mine. Grant and I used to do TEDx Santa Monica. We've known each other for years and years. And I will let Grant introduce our guests today because he's gotten to know them much better than I do. I think his introduction will mean more. One of the things that I would tell you about Grant Graves is he works with the Red Cross. Before the whole COVID thing, he was in the process of finishing up his disaster recovery. I think you can tell us what it's actually called, Grant, but getting a degree in that. And so he's been a really useful guy to have on these calls because of his unique perspective. And nobody here is necessarily representing any organization. We're all just here as individuals, but he's got that insight, which is meant a lot on these calls. And something that not everybody knows is Grant Graves is deeply, deeply connected to the ocean, and no pun intended. And if you follow his Twitter feed or any of his social media feeds, you will get some of the best, most up-to-date, coolest, most interesting stuff about the ocean that you could ever hope for. And Grant is an absolute master scuba diver. So when we're all back, I think we should all go for a reunion scuba dive with Grant. But anyway, Grant, I'll pass it over to you, and thanks for being the interviewer host today.
Oh, thank you, John, for that generous introduction. I have a bachelor's degree in marine biology and make my for-profit living from the water. And I'm very interested in today because I'm facing exactly what a lot of people are facing is when you have in-person, in-your-face clients, how are we going to do that? I'm not so certain I can go back to work just yet because underwater, we're super safe, right, David? There's probably really good distancing there. However, it's the in-between that worries me. On a boat, it's really hard to socially distance and, the bubble outside. So in my mind, I'm kind of waiting for that fast test that is under $10 and I can know in 10 minutes, but that doesn't exist as far as I know yet. And then at least I know the bubble of the client and me are starting at scratch. But anyway, we're here today to have a good conversation about this. We have three amazing guests, Shirley, Luca, and David. They all bring really unique talents and perspectives. And instead of me introducing them, I'll go to each one with a question. But if you could give me guests or a sentence or two about kind of where you're coming from and where, what your perspective is on this getting started a bit before you answer the question, that would be really helpful. And that way they can hear from you in your words. So Shirley, why don't you give us a little bit about you? And then the first question for everyone is, what is your concern? Like, I have a concern. I have to meet face to face. You're professionals that are consulting other people and seeing a lot more. What's your personal concern with the reopening and kind of where we're at right now? Shirley, if you could go first, that'd be great.
Hey guys, so my name is Shirley Moore and I am one of the owners of Be More Interpreting, and I'm a co-founder at a co-working space here in Pawtucket that focuses on Black and Brown businesses. And I am concerned about a couple things. Number one, I'm concerned about the co-working space. We're still not fully open. Members can go in there when they want to go in there. But I'm concerned about how do we keep a space completely clean and sanitized with so many people coming in and out, and how do you socially distance people that don't already work together? So like, how do you make sure that there are these spaces, and still there's space for everyone else? So it's an interesting dynamic, but I'm hopeful about what's next. Thank you.
Luca, what about you?
Great, guys. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the support. My name is Luca Carnevale. I work at Hope in Maine, and we essentially help people start food businesses. We're a nonprofit organization. We've been around for 5.5 years or so, and we've helped launch about 250 businesses. And I think my concern, from a business standpoint, is just the food industry as a whole. I mean, Grant, to your point, when you're on a boat, you're really close. When you're in food, there's a lot of contact. There's a lot of face-to-face. There's a lot of room for error, right? And that leaves a lot of room for an outbreak to happen. I'm also concerned from a business standpoint with restaurants not being able to maintain their full capacity and understanding they operate on razor-thin margins. And then consumer behavior tied in with that, right? So who really wants to go out and sit, 6 feet away from somebody else that they don't really know for a couple hours at a time? I think those are a few things I'm concerned with right now.
And David, what about you?
Hi, everyone. Again, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here. My name is David Concannon. I'm a lawyer with a national practice. I've got offices on both coasts, and I have been advising clients, small, medium, and large entrepreneurs, businesses in the restaurant industry, summer camps, in recreation and hotels and things since the beginning of this outbreak, just really trying to give them answers, help them survive. I've got kind of a unique perspective because I got the virus early in March and I was working every day during that time period and trying to help people with answers and honestly not have a crystal ball. And I traveled from the West to the East and now I'm in Philadelphia, and it's a completely different atmosphere here in New Jersey and Pennsylvania than it is in Idaho. And interestingly, I live in the community that had the highest infection rate in the country for a month. So I'm all over the map with COVID, but I kind of feel like I know it well.
Excellent, thank you. He's also the gentleman who recovered the Apollo 11 engines, if anyone's interested in that. And he also has been to the Titanic multiple times, like for real, in a submarine. But
And
that's for another time.
Well,
so the
thanks.
Kind of the follow-up question is, what are you guys hearing from clients? Because you're all interacting with a lot of really varied clients. What are their main concerns, and are they different from your own? Who would like to go first? I'll just pick. Luca, why don't you go first?
I had a feeling you were going to pick me first. That's great. You know, I think it's client dependent for us. We have some clients who are just concerned for their business in general. Some reoccurring issues are just finding staff, and we're in a weird position where unemployment's really high, but staff is difficult to find. So that's some concerns that we're hearing. Again, capacity issues where, you know, if I ran the world and if I had a magic wand, I wouldn't limit the capacity to say 50%. I would just send out regulations to restaurants and to food service places and say you need to abide by these rules, and however it shakes out, it shakes out. You know, I think those are the high level concerns for most of our businesses, aside from, you know, the everyday concerns, the personal concerns of, you know, I'm on the front lines, am I going to get sick? You know, what's going to happen to me and my family?
Cool. David, what about yourself?
My experience has been that the two main questions my clients have, first of all, in the beginning, it was how long is this going to last? And what does this mean? Because everybody's budgeting out on a short term. As it became longer and longer and longer, the question became, okay, when I can reopen, whenever that is, how do I reopen, and what do I do, and how do I comply? And I think it's a lot of problem solving. I think some of the most interesting people I've helped actually run summer camps for young people, both in New England and internationally. And so here's a set of people that are not largely affected by the virus, and the staff is actually young as well. One is in a state where they took guidance from the government, and the other, the local government, and the other is internationally. And neither one of them wanted to give up their operations this summer for a lot of reasons, some of them financial. But you know, these problems are real, and I mean, I see a lot of clients just throwing in the towel on 2020 and saying, I'll just wait, I'll do it next year, or I'll do it in the fall, hopefully. It's been interesting trying to weed through the uncertainty.
Yeah, I can imagine. Shirley, what about you? What are you hearing from your clients?
So on the interpreting side, one of the biggest needs that they've had is virtual interpretation that's HIPAA compliant and fully secure, people that can't use medical offices, IEP meetings, those kinds of things, people that cannot use Zoom or Google Meet to meet with their clients. So we've had to, you know, buy that service to be able to provide it to our clients. On the co-working end, I'm seeing a little bit of what everybody is saying, and a couple of things that I'm seeing that is in addition is, number one, how do I now pivot my business. So everything that I did before was in person, but if this happens again, how do I make sure that I have a service that is virtual, that is sustainable? And then number two, how do I now capitalize on what I've learned working from home and maximize my opportunity so I reduce my overhead costs and shift to working from home as much as possible? And so those are some of the conversations that we're having.
Brings up an interesting next question, I think. Are you hearing from clients that a lot of workers want to stay virtual, and are most of them open to sustaining that?
Yes.
David?
Yes. Often. And the answer to both questions is yes.
That's one of my favorite answers, especially from a lawyer. So I imagine from a liability standpoint, having that protection where that employee can't say, hey, I got sick at work, is also an added benefit, right?
Yeah, and what I'm seeing a lot of is employees. My practice, we set up my office to work virtually about 2 years ago, and for people that haven't made that trend over, they really like it. I mean, the kids drive me crazy, the dogs drive me crazy, but eventually they go back to school, and you can let the dogs out. So they really like not having to commute, not having to get dressed up, not having to have that interaction, sit in an office or a cubicle. So there is a strong trend towards people wanting to go remote and making that transition. That's what I'm seeing all over the place.
And then Shirley, you talked about a technological solution for the privacy HIPAA related concerns. Do you mind mentioning what that solution is, in case somebody hasn't?
Yeah, so there are several different platforms. We became members of UseKed. They're specific to the interpreting industry, but there are several different platforms that you can seek out. I only know the ones for interpreting, but there is Secure Video, I think is the name of it, that you could buy a membership and then attach it to your Zoom, and that secures your Zoom meetings. But just with a little bit of research, you can find information. I will say that Secure Virtual Secure, whatever it was that I just mentioned, they stopped taking new members back in like April. They just could not cover the need that was being put on them.
Now, communication and interpretation, we know in person really matters. Are you finding that a lot of the communication space or translation space wants to stay virtual, or they're looking forward to getting back to being in person, or are they finding some happy medium?
So just a key point in interpretation. Interpretation is verbal and translation is written.
Okay. My bad.
No, that's okay. Nobody really knows. Everybody says translation. So I think it's funny because there are some people that are saying, I never knew I could do this. Because if you have, for example, IEP meetings that you have to host and parents have other children, it's hard for them to come in without the kids. But if you could meet virtually, that's great. But then I have doctors' offices that need you like in the instant, and they don't have the patience to wait for like a video connection. So they want someone there 15 minutes prior, ready to go for appointment. So it really depends on the client and their needs.
Okay, great. And Luca, I kind of saved you for last because virtual doesn't really exist for the restaurant business. So I'm interested to hear the perspective.
Virtual doesn't really exist for food service. I mean, we have some interesting, there's some interesting solutions, and Mary Hughes, who's on the call right now, does food service delivery, right? And that is something that would offer, a work from home solution where you take your orders online, you process everything through an interface, and there's very limited interaction with your customer that way. So again, I think it depends on the model, and there is some, but by and large, it's nearly impossible to work from home as a food service person.
So as a follow-on, my understanding is a lot of restaurants make a lot of their profit from alcohol. I know some places have allowed alcohol delivery, but I imagine the atmosphere has changed a bit, and that business hasn't like jumped up dramatically to make up the difference. How are your clients adjusting to the delivery model versus in-house dining, especially if they're only going to be at 25 or 50% capacity?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the restaurant, right? So again, to pick on Mary because she's in this, Mary has had some good success over this because of that home delivery aspect, and that's what her business model was set up for. It depends on how the restaurant can pivot and what their food is. So there's fine dining establishments in Rhode Island that unfortunately don't have the ability to pivot because their meal is designed to be eaten, within 30 seconds of it being delivered. It's not designed to be transported. So I think that's indicative of the path we're going to move down with food service and restaurants here is the fast casual, the quick service, the American comfort food restaurants are going to go gangbusters here, in short order. And it's going to be very difficult for those 5-star experiential dining places to continue on unless they can figure out a way, unless they can figure out that pivot. And I think for some of those restaurants, it's going to be difficult. And our founder, equates this to a Noah's Ark moment, right? So you got to get on the boat, right, in order to get on the boat to survive. And unfortunately, there's not room for everybody on the boat. So, it's interesting to see, how they will pivot to hit on something David said a few minutes ago. We do see some places just throwing in the towel on 2020 and looking forward to 2021 as well. But yeah, I think that sort of answers your overall question.
Yeah, for sure. Shirley, what are the kind of top 2 yeah buts you're hearing from prospective co-working space people? I want to sign up, yeah, but.
Will my employer pay for it?
Mm.
And the other thing is, how are you cleaning up after everyone?
Okay, perfect.
And I don't have an answer for the second one yet.
Yeah,
So
I don't
maybe,
expect you guys to have answers. It's more of us thinking together, I think, a little group think going on. And these are perfect ideas to bring forward into our small group discussions here in a little bit. I saved you for last, David, because here's the zinger to all this. Kind of first, should the business even reopen, or should we all just throw in the towel to 2020 if we can not starve? And 2, liability-wise, or just watching our ass, what's kind of the most important things? Shirley mentioned cleaning. I imagine publishing and rigorously following your protocol for that and having some backup would be a good idea, right? Or am I completely missing the mark and that's 3 or 4 down the road?
It's a great question, Grant. The easy question is the first question. Yes, you should reopen. You really should. And
I think a lot of us just collectively went, whew.
I see a lot of quarantine fatigue, a lot around the country, and people who frankly have to get back to business or they will not survive. This has gone on a lot longer than people could have expected or budgeted for, and it's do or die. So number one. Number 2, I try a lot of cases, as you know. I try cases all over the country. And I'm writing a lot of liability waivers in our firm for clients in all different industries. I don't really believe that as a trial lawyer, that I got an infection in your workplace case is going to have legs. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to take on and prove and win such a case anywhere in the US, unless the business is really just shoddy. But you take a restaurant, we're talking about rats in the kitchen shoddy. Because at the end of the day, lawsuits are decided by juries, and we all sit on juries. We all have had a common experience, and that's not common when you get inside a courtroom. You normally want to exclude jurors that have anything in common with any of the parties so that they have a fresh set of eyes and ears to listen to the evidence. That's impossible now. So when it comes to the virus, what did you do to stay safe, and what was reasonable, and what did the plaintiff do? Were they taking good care of themselves? Were they social distancing? Were they making sure that they didn't get sick? How do you prove that I got coronavirus from a Mexican restaurant versus from the bus stop? you know, it's or the sidewalk. So I
So,
do.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I would not want to be, as if I were a plaintiff's lawyer, I would not be out there advertising for coronavirus cases. Now there will be, but you know, I'll defend those cases all day long, and I think we'll be successful.
So I imagine it's probably a good thing to have some kind of protocol from wherever bigger than yourself, maybe even publish it, and then sign off to it every so many hours that you're doing these cleaning procedures or whatever. I know County of LA has a 5-phase thing before you can reopen. I know there's been some efforts in diving, like Be Dive Ready and Dive Strong, to say, here's what we're promising we're going to do with gear that's rental gear and stuff like that. But I think a lot of this is coming from more of a place of instilling some confidence back into the clients. Do any of you three have some examples that what some of your clients are already engaging in that are really that way, but more pointed at trying to get the clients confident enough to show back up? David, you're nodding your head, so I'll let you go first if you're enthusiastic.
You mentioned scuba diving and rental equipment. You know, that's one area where there won't be any industry standards or government standards to tell you how to sanitize scuba gear. But the people that need the clients to come in, because now we're in the diving season, are making it known that they go the extra mile to make sure the rental equipment is safe. I don't think people are too eager to rent equipment that everybody uses anyway, but when it comes to dive boats and social distancing and things like that. But you know, I am seeing fatalities in scuba diving, and
Not COVID related, just diving related.
no COVID related.
Oh wow.
And so it's you know, really something that you have to be careful of. But you know, you talk about liability, and somebody dies on a dive boat or in a facility that, or you know, wherever. It's a real issue. I'm seeing it already. I started seeing it in March, April. So you know, you got to be careful. But I think the best thing for people to understand, especially in the restaurant industry where you have health codes and health inspections, if you comply with the standards that are set by the government, you're pretty much in good stead.
Yeah, there's a couple of chat comments that, have you seen any COVID cases filed yet? And do we have any scenarios? You've provided some already with the rental gear, but we'll ask the others too. Have you seen any cases related to COVID directly yet? Okay.
No, but I think the reason is that it's too soon, and the courts are essentially shut down. They're limping along, and so you know, it's difficult to file and prosecute a lawsuit right now. So the answer is no.
Okay.
I expect them like 6 months out.
Okay. Shirley, what about yourself? Anything that you've heard from clients that they're doing to kind of reinvigorate or instill confidence in clients' willingness to show back up?
So some clients are actually distributing, and I'm talking about like medical offices, primarily are the ones that have brought people back in, are actually distributing PPE. So they'll give you your own mask and your own gloves. They'll have you sanitize your hand and take your temperature when you walk in. And if, you know, that has helped people go back. I will say that as far as like co-working members, one of the things that we've heard is I've started to meet people in public, and we sit like at a bench or a long bench or something like that at a park, and they sit on one end and I sit on the other. And so that gives us fresh air, and we're still connecting and being able to interact in person.
Are they doing that with a mask on or not?
Mask on.
Okay. Some states, not a lot of mask use right now, right? Luca, what about yourself? Anything you're hearing from the incubator, your startups, your clients, even delivery? Like, I know that's been happening, but maybe there's a competitive advantage if someone puts out there that we're handling this in a more clean way or something.
Yeah, you're seeing that a lot, right? You're seeing the Domino's commercials of where we cook our food at 450 degrees and you know, nobody touches it until it reaches you. You're seeing that messaging more and more. I think food service and restaurants are in a pretty unique position because this is, You know, this is what we do. We make sure environments are clean. We make sure environments are sanitized. We do our best to keep that bacteria, that virus mitigation as low as possible. So there are extra precautions, there are extra things that food service needs to do, but as long as we're following regulations and good manufacturing practices, not many things have to change in our industry, I feel.
Are you? Oh, go
Unless
ahead.
there's rats in the kitchen.
Are you finding that they're pushing that out in a public voice way to let the clients know when they may not have before?
Yeah, I believe so. I think you're seeing that more and more, and I think that's coming out in the marketing more and more. You're seeing, you know, farmers markets take extra precautions and not allowing sampling or limiting cash transactions or pushing towards mobile apps for deliveries or things like that. So you are seeing it more and more from a marketing or from a perception standpoint.
I have to ask, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, have you dined in yet?
I have not dined in yet.
I had to.
Well, the reason that not because I don't want to. The reason is it just started like a week or two ago here. It didn't start too long ago here, and I just haven't had a chance to. And sitting in a parking lot or sitting on a street just seems a little awkward to me. So we'll sit inside one day.
I'm not sure I want to exhaust with my calamari yet. Shirley, what about you? Have you dined in yet? It's only fair I ask all three of you.
I have not,
Okay.
and I'm not ready to, but we have picked up and eaten at parks outside.
Cool. I have to ask, what's the concern and when will it be okay to dine in for you?
For me personally, I'm already a germaphobe and kind of like antsy about
I don't think we can
like,
use the word germaphobe anymore. I think we're all germaphobes now, right? So it's just
so
normal.
you can imagine the anxiety during this quarantine for Shirley. But I just, you know, I think that we're still rolling out things slowly, right? And there's a lot of guidance and guidelines, but I mean, the execution of that is going to be different for everyone. And guaranteeing that everyone is doing it is going to be difficult. And aside from that, I think it's too early to determine if what we've rolled out is actually working and safe. And so I'd rather just err on the side of caution.
It's all good. You don't have to defend it. David, you're in a very different position since you know you already had it. So where do you come at this from as somebody who's COVID antibody positive, so to speak?
We've been dining out often for more than a month. And the interesting thing is my community got shellacked. We got crushed. And I personally know 35 people in my community that were sick with the virus. I know 2 people that were not, only 2.
Wow.
And so in my community, it's as if it's, you know, the day after the hurricane came through.
It's like, woo, on to recovery now.
Tap the keg, you know, and so it was a little, we've been reopened since the beginning of May, and restaurants have been open since the middle of May. It was a little tentative for about the first 28 minutes. And then after that, off we went. And so, you know, but the ironic thing is we couldn't get tested. I had to come back to Pennsylvania to get tested.
Wow.
So, but you know, it was maybe 27 minutes before people were eating out and dining in, and we were taking out, as you know, in my town, you had to have a sign in the window if you were going out. It said RX if you're getting prescriptions. You could go to the pharmacy or the supermarket. The hospital was closed. It was shut down because they lost their staff.
Wow.
So, you know, we were locked down hard in early March. And yeah, they're open for business. And
so I guess as a follow-up, if someone isn't reopened yet or they're just starting off, what's kind of the one best practice or best piece of advice for someone feeling a bit stuck? What should they do first? David, you could roll with that.
That's a good question. Grant, I think what they should do first is really take a hard look at So if you're the business owner, let's take that perspective. If you're the business owner, you take a really, really hard look at whether you need to be open to make your life complete. You know, first and foremost, think about your health, think about your family, think about the safety of your employees. And if you cross that threshold and you think that you can control that, then how are you going to reopen? You're going to be open for takeout, or you're going to be reopened for phone consultations, and you know everything is moving at your comfort level, because you know it's only money really at the end of the day. If you can survive with lower income, or you can survive with lower staff, um, to make sure you're safe and you feel safe, then you should. And it's not a legal answer, it's more of a personal answer, that, and I give that answer to everybody that I consult with.
Cool. Shirley, what about you? What do you think? One of your coworkers come up to you and said, I'm really afraid to reopen. What should I do first?
Same thing. I say read. I point everyone at the Rhode Island has a reopeningri.com website. I point them there, read it over, understand the guidelines, what the requirements are, and then determine if you can actually adhere to that, if it's feasible for you, or if it's going to cost you more money to open up your doors than it is to stay shut, because a lot of people are going to have to invest a lot of money to stay safe, to make money. So those are the things that we're sort of unpacking with people. And so far, the majority of people are still going to ride it out throughout the summer and reassess in the fall.
Luca, what about yourself? I know, is there talk of price increases? What is your advice on reopening, or staying takeout only, or whatever? Oh, yeah, you can go beyond the restaurant business, of course.
That's fine. I mean, ditto, right? I think you need to assess your personal and family situation before you decide to open. And Shirley and I are in a class together, and one of our classmates was closed for about 2 months before he felt comfortable enough to open, and he opens on a pretty limited basis right now. It's only 2 or 3 days a week just for takeout, and that's a comfort thing for him, and that makes perfect sense. So if I could just echo, what everybody else has said, I agree.
And do you think especially restaurants, will there need to be a dramatic price increase for them to find a new profitable profit center?
I think so. Yeah, I think you'll see prices rising to either try to make up for losses or try to cover those extra expenses to make sure that their diner is safe, or to make sure that the experience is what they're looking for. Okay. So I think they'll go up.
So David, Dana,
if I could just add something.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I think across the board we're going to see price increases, because this wasn't like we shut down for a little while and we're going to recuperate this money later on. Like, we lost money for a long time, and now we have to put money back. That's not coming. There's no way to replace it. So the only answer is to either increase business or increase your prices.
Yeah, and I think the idea that, we're in huge unemployment, labor's going to be cheap, is a big mistake. No matter how desperate, people are much more aware of the health risks, I think. And a lot of the jobs that are immediately available are higher risk jobs. So it's not going to be a $10 an hour thing. I don't think. That's just my personal opinion. But David, Dana would like to know what town you were in that was so hard hit.
Sun Valley, Idaho, in Blaine County. Blaine County, Idaho led the U.S. for the second half of March, first week of April.
Tourist hub, so I imagine the virus
town.
probably was introduced from outside. But Tino, do we want to go to Q&A now for a little bit before we break out, or were we going to save that to the end? I didn't remember our final choice.
Yeah, we can definitely do kind of a little bit more Q&A. We technically have 12 more minutes before we break out into our kind of rooms, for half an hour, and we definitely want to open up a couple of questions. I know that there are people who are typing in some questions into chat. So, I mean, if you like, you can unmute and ask a question.
Okay, there's one in chat that said, and I don't know who would address this, but feel free. Is the Fed angling for high inflation to try to deal with some of this? All right, that would probably facilitate and need even higher price increases, but maybe to mask it? Is that the question? Or John, would you like to ask it in your own words? You're muted, I think.
Yeah, it seems to me like probably there's going to be a lot of competition for workers. Like, I don't think that the unemployment rate is going to stop that. And then there's a huge amount of money that's been poured into the economy. There's a lot of government debt. So that seems to me to point towards the Fed at least wanting to have much higher rates of inflation. And I just wonder if anybody's tracking that more closely than I am. Because I think that impacts all of our businesses
Well,
too.
sure.
You know?
So, Luca, are you seeing tough to find replacement workers or get workers to come back in your restaurants?
Yeah,
Mary's shaking her
100%.
head.
Everybody I talk to is having the same issue right now, and I'm not sure if on August 1st that's going to change. But from
Right,
grocery
after
store to
Concannon
restaurants,
stops.
yeah, exactly.
Mary, I see you shaking your head. Do you have some ideas? It looks like you're identifying with this a lot.
I've been looking for an experienced cook for a while, and so far I haven't had any luck. And in the past, I usually can find somebody pretty readily.
Okay. Did I lose Shirley? I'm not seeing her. You here, Shirley? Okay. David, you mentioned a lot of your businesses are having trouble finding people and there's a shortage of workers. What does that revolve around? People happy they're on PUA and they're just not going to work until they make more, or they're afraid, or what's going on, do you think?
The main situation I see is that the workers have gone other places because they couldn't afford to be out of work indefinitely. So they picked up other work and are not available to come back. That's the number one issue I see.
So they've already transitioned to some other work.
Yeah. Right. For my clients, either their workers have, I mean, in the service industries in a ski town where I am, unfortunately, the line workers really took it on the chin. They were the first to go, and they're, really looking to come back. The servers and but they left.
Oh, okay. So they just left the area. Tino?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as locally in the ski town, one of the things is it's seasonal employment anyway.
Okay.
So they close in April. They close the ski resort in April.
They were just done and on to their other jobs at that point.
Correct. Well, they were just done and on to
the next season. Yeah.
So,
Tino?
So I have a quick question for everyone. So I know, Mary, you shared that it was hard for you to find someone, and David, your answer is like the exact opposite. I think of just in the news, like and people I know, I experienced both. Like, what is the disconnect? It seems like there are a lot of people looking for work, but also there are a lot of people looking for staff as well. So, we'd love to kind of just open it up, and hear kind of your response to that.
Folks the CARES Act is really, that $600 bonus is really disincentivizing people to go back to work. And that's what I'm hearing is grocery stores have employees who, are making more money on unemployment than they are through working, right? So they're just not incentivized to be there at the moment.
So we're headed for a big giant reality check, it sounds like. Shirley, the question out there is, there seems to be pools of people needing work and people who need staff, and a disconnect on connecting those two. It's been prefaced that the CARES Act may disincentivize low wage pay, but it sounds like this is occurring at a higher level too. So have you noticed a communication or an access gap? Oh, you're muted, I think. No.
I think Shirley's internet dropped out in between.
Okay.
I dropped off, yeah.
Okay, you're the.
Oh man.
Oh, man.
Oh, we got her twice.
Oh, man. So can you guys hear me?
So nice. We got her twice. Well,
Shirley.
David.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, go ahead. We're hearing you twice, I think.
So
I think. Oh man.
my internet cut out, and I
Yeah,
had all kinds.
your computer mic's working again now.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I think one of the things that we're gonna notice is, number one, the CARES Act is gonna end July 31st. So come July 31st, people are gonna need money. And so they're gonna head back to work. But I do think right now there is no incentive to risking your life when you're so well taken care of at home.
And David, are you seeing higher end level problems too? Executive level
I
issues?
think Shirley just hit the nail on the head. At the lower end, I mean, that was well said. Where I'm seeing real hard difficulties is in the highly skilled, highly compensated, or mediumly, well-paid employees. Companies that they don't know what the future looks like, so they're either in a hiring freeze or they're in a reduction. And there's a lot of businesses that they just don't know what the future looks like, so they're downplaying. I mean, I'm sitting in an empty house that I took a gigantic hit on to sell because of this, because at the price point that it's in, it's people that are professionals that have to have job security. Really
Meredith, I
tough.
see you shaking your head. Maybe you can give us an insight.
Sure. Being one of those, lucky or unlucky people, as David was describing, absolutely organizations, they don't know fiscally what to do, what's the right bet. So you saw, they had openings, often then backfills for existing roles for people who left and moved on or moved upward or onward, that they're filling the position internally by shuffling things around to not actually replace the headcount. Definitely seeing a lot of things that just are just still on hold, and it's an indefinite hold forever. It's the other piece of the puzzle. And then of course, existing companies, I'm in the insurance industry, some of them have done, enterprise-wide, salary reductions. Proportionate, obviously, but that's a piece of the puzzle as well. So it's just this climate of uncertainty that it's creating for the staff that's there, as they're kind of seeing upward around these empty chairs and no one knowing if they're going to fill them.
Right. Great point. Thank you. I know for the virtual side, there seems to be a lot of interest in the free stuff, but converting the free stuff to paid stuff is a problem for many of us. So I'm wondering if any of you have an insight on, and I think David's point that there's a lot of uncertainty and there's kind of they're just not ready to invest the money at the high end, and the individuals are so afraid that they won't have a job, they don't really want to invest as well. And John and Tina, you certainly can step into this as well. That kind of transition to virtual, but being face-to-face again, how do you turn that from a free to a paid relationship?
We're literally doing that right now with this event, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. And none of us has gotten hired out of this. Yeah, that's not my point to get hired, but I think we're all facing the same issue. We've given away a lot of content, and David told me this when Tina was online the other day, that most of the COVID stuff isn't paying, but it's necessary just because people are freaking out.
I'd like to make a point right
John,
here.
Go ahead. John.
Very clearly, Dino said it best. He said, we're doing that right now. One of the ways you convert things to paid is you give someone an incentive. The reason I'm here today, believe it or not, is because I'm contributing $5 to nourish our neighbors.
Thank you.
And I think that's an important thing. Now, why do I think that's important? I think it's important because it's important regardless of me or what we do. So what Tino has noticed, he's noticed something important going on in the community, and he's matched that or attached that to this effort. And that's a step in that direction. There's no easy, quick answer to exactly what you're asking, but we can do things. And my
I,
opinion,
I don't think any of us has figured it out yet, obviously.
well, no,
I
of
know
course not.
John has something with special warfare going on. That obviously closed under COVID. I don't want to call you out, but I'm calling you out. John Bates. You're muted. Sorry.
So you mean my work with the Navy coming up?
Yeah, did that close during COVID? So something changed
Yeah, I
over?
mean, that request, I had worked with them before.
Okay.
They had wanted to do more stuff with me. We actually were talking about it, then COVID hit, everything went, silent. And then they got back to me recently, and they're just finalizing up the paperwork for a mid-August training. So, I don't feel like I'm in a position to say no to that. It's very good money. It's a 2-day training. They want to do another one after that. So, I don't feel like I'm even in a position to say no to that. I'm still trying to decide if I'm going to fly down or drive down. I know that the Navy has been doing things where they'll have groups quarantine for 2 weeks, make sure that no one has it, give everybody a chance to, show they've got it if they do, and then they'll put those folks together and call it a pod. And so they've been, that's one of the ways they've been dealing with it. And so, there's some possibility that they'll ask me to just heavily self-quarantine and then drive down. So, I can be part of their pod, but who knows?
Well,
But
the optimistic news is there are still organizations out there that have budget that need to be spent. So there are potentials.
yeah.
When you don't have the budget and there's uncertainty, it's probably going to take a little longer. That's what I'm hearing.
All right, so I'm going to chime in
Okay.
kind of very quickly because I think John Bates, I know that we would love to kind of discuss kind of more of that. And I think that's almost more.
It's a teaser for the 30th.
I know that's a teaser for our 30th kind of meeting, because I think it's something that I share the same problem. Like a lot of our clients that I work with are in person, and we literally got in trouble translating some of the digital, and she got some poor feedback that we're adjusting right now. But we'd love to kind of keep that conversation going kind of for the 30th. We're roughly kind of under half an hour to 6 o'clock. And this is kind of one thing that we have kept from our previous kind of meeting. And we want to kind of just break out into our groups. So this is, kind of once again, like it's all about kind of just kind of sharing kind of what we know, kind of getting to know one another. I know that there probably like half of us are on kind of within kind of driving distance of in Rhode Island or around Rhode Island. Even given this time, like it's nice to kind of feel close, even in a virtual sense. I think what we're going to do kind of is to kind of use the prompts that kind of Grant, or the first question that Grant kind of asked. And if you can repeat what that is before we break out into our groups.
What is your biggest personal concern
Yep.
or about this time we're in, or reopening, or whatever about right now? What's weighing heavy on your heart and mind?
Excellent, thank you.
You can introduce yourselves if you don't already know each other.
Yeah, so we're gonna break out for kind of roughly 20 minutes. Typically how this goes is that we just go into our groups. We get to know one another, and kind of some conversations kind of just veers off kind of immediately. And it's really kind of up to each group. This is really a time and space to kind of get to know one another a little bit more. If the prompt is something that's interesting you want to dive into, kind of please feel free. We're going to come back in the last 5 minutes and kind of just hear some highlights from each of the groups, and then we'll end the call. So, Mike, are you ready to magically put us into our groups?